touch.
Yeah.
I've been thinking, the vast majority of unsubs with this type of MO aren't driven by the killing. They're merely fascinated by the body parts. Psychologically, they exist in a realm where fantasy meets delusion. It's basically the perfect blueprint for a creation of a serial killer. I'm rambling, aren't I?
Yes.
Is that one of Johnny McHale's books?
Yeah, it's called Blue. It's about a girl who thinks she's a real human being, right? But it turns out she's a robot that was built by her uncle.
So it's Pinocchio.
Yeah, it is like Pinocchio, only set in a high school in outer space.
Brother against brother, that's tough.
Well, according to the Bible, fratricide was the first type of murder ever committed.
That's interesting. Anyhow, he's...
Garcia's been digging through William's computer. She found an encrypted link to a web page.
Where'd it take you?
An unsearchable, untraceable blog with tons of journal entries. It's like some sort of diary.
You find anything incriminating?
I was able to differentiate between two distinct voices, two authors. I found various idiosyncratic words, phrases, punctuation, and orthography within the blog entries consistent with each separate person. Words like soda and pop. One guy uses dashes while the other uses ellipses.
Where'd you find this kid?
He was left in a basket on the steps of the FBI.
One side of the discourse made reference to the Devil's Strip.
What the hell's that?
It's a small patch of grass that separates the sidewalk from the street. Now, that term is only used in central Ohio. William lived in Atlanta for 20 years, but he grew up in Columbus. The other guy uses words like turnpike and filling the gas tank, both specific regionalisms for Florida.
Kid, you sure about this? Right.
So how does our unsub go from loser of the year to Don Juan?
Actually, as Byron interpreted him, Don Juan was an ironic reversal of sex roles. And that's about it. Hey, did you know that Carlo Lorenzini, the guy that wrote Pinocchio, was said to be obsessed with the human nose? As a matter of fact,
Wow.
Pinocchio wasn't even the first character.
Interesting. Coffee?
I'm all right, thank you, though, for asking. If this unsub is using tornadoes as a forensic countermeasure, then Kansas certainly is the ideal setting. Tornadoes do pose a significant threat. During this year's super outbreak back in April, there were 336 confirmed tornadoes in just several days, resulting in over 300 lives lost. A popular theory among leading astrophysicists estimate that the hypermatter reactor would need about 10 to the 32nd joules of energy to destroy a planet the size of Earth. Now, Lucas said it took 19 years to build the first Death Star, right? But if you look at the new essential chronology, there's a testbed prototype for a super laser that spans... Where are you going? I didn't know you were a bad flyer.
I'm not, I just hate turbulence.
You know, turbulence very rarely causes planes to crash.
It does me absolutely no good at the moment. Thank you.
What we really need to worry about are microbursts. It's sudden downbursts of air associated with thunderstorms, but a small craft like this, if we hit one of those at the wrong altitude, we'll pulverize.
I beg of you to make him stop.
Wearing a bride-to-be sash must be like waving a red cape at a bull.
Actually, bulls are colorblind, so it doesn't really matter what color cape a matador waves. It's the cape's movement that elicits an aggressive charge response. But Morgan's metaphor still applies here. This is probably a man who had his...
What, are you trying to say you think he keeps coming back here because he's in love with her?
It's impossible. A sexual sadist can't feel love.
I'll define love.
Chemically, it involves surging brain elements called monoamines, dopamines, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Love chemicals controlled by phenolphthaleamine, also found in
Chocolate. I love chocolate.
peas, too. It's also found in peas.
Peas?
Reid.
Indeed. Some people
Reid,
become very
stop,
lucky.
please.
All right, the first victim was found missing his right leg, the second, both arms, and the third had no torso. So that leaves the left leg and the head unaccounted for. We can assume the head would be the most difficult piece to find.
That part would have to fit an unsub's fantasy perfectly.
So he most likely saved it for last. Now, what that tells us is there's a victim out there we haven't found yet who's missing his left leg.
Or the unsub hasn't acquired it yet.
True, but most body part collectors evolve to this level, and in many cases, they exhume bodies for parts before they start killing.
All right, so tell us about blood drinkers, Reid.
Human blood consumption, or clinical vampirism, is known as Renfield syndrome. It's named after the insect-eating character in Bram Stoker's novel Dracula.
Are they sadists?
Not necessarily. Pain to the victim is usually only a byproduct. Blood is the focus. Renfield syndrome is usually accompanied by varying levels of schizophrenia and occasionally more classic cannibalism as the condition evolves. I will say this, true cases are exceedingly rare.
They mostly just dress up like Prentice did in high school and play make-believe. It's all kinds of delicious.
It's not the same thing at all. As a matter of fact, we should refer to this unsub as a vampirist, not a vampire. And they would be attracted to the subculture merely for its professed worship of blood. Guys, one more thing. Vampirists are coveters. They almost generally always have some sort of relationship with the victim, even if it's tangential, and they're likely to become obsessed. They've almost certainly crossed paths in some way.
Is that the one where they fly around in the phone booth?
First of all, it's a police box, not a phone booth. Second of all, Doctor Who started a quarter of a century before Bill and Ted even went on their bodacious adventure, so really they should have just called it Bill and Ted's Excellent Ripoff. I mean, at least then they would have
I'm
been...
really sorry.
For what?
Asking.
We aren't looking for a vampire in the supernatural sense, only in the sense that this unsub has a very strong desire, a need for human blood. Now, fortunately, vampires display several characteristics which will be helpful in finding him. He will have cut himself repeatedly. It's called auto-vampirism, essentially becoming his own first victim, and it's the way by which he first tasted human blood. Most vampires are incredibly ashamed of this and will wear long-sleeve shirts in order to conceal it. Secondly, there'll be a long history of animal abuse, starting with smaller animals such as insects and rodents, and then working his way up to larger things, dogs and cats. Though this is a well-recognized component of the homicidal triad seen in other serial killers, in the case of the vampirist, it's more pronounced. There will, interestingly enough, not be any animal torture, as with other psychopathologies. The killing isn't the point, it's merely a means by which to obtain the blood. This guy also most likely lives in a poorly kept older home. The cool thing about Halloween is that it's a uniquely American holiday. I mean, despite its obvious origins in the Celtic festival of Samhain and the Christian All Saints' Day, it really is a melting pot of various immigrants' traditions and beliefs. It became a little more commercialized in the 1950s with trick-or-treat, and today it rivals only Christmas in terms of popularity.
All I asked was what he was doing this weekend.
You know, I'm toying with the notion of either going to the Edgar Allan Poe Shadow Puppet Theater or the reenactment of the 19th century Phantasmagoria.
I don't want to know.
Oh, yeah, you do. Phantasmagorias are these amazing pre-cinema projected ghost shows invented in France where the showman attempted to spook the audience using science magic. And it just so happens that I have an extra ticket.
Tempting. He's an FBI agent.
Actually, law enforcement officials are just as probable statistically to commit a crime as anyone else. Look at the cross-section of a society. There's a general population and a small faction of this percentage.
He's not actually saying we believe Derek is involved in this.
Oh, no, yeah, not at all. I'm merely, speaking theoretically.
You're Dr. Reid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Derek talks about you.
He does? Candles are used in rituals.
Also used on birthday cakes.
Actually, they were originally used to protect the birthday celebrant from demons for the coming year. As a matter of fact, down to the 4th century, Christianity rejected the birthday celebration as a pagan ritual.
What kind of doctor are you? How'd you crack it?
I profiled the author. Cortland Ryan was on death row with several high-ranking members of the Aryan Brotherhood.
He got the code from the Aryans?
Either that or you read a lot of 16th century literature. The Aryans like to use a cipher based on a 400-year-old code written by Sir Francis Bacon.
So it's a binary code.
Yeah, Bacon used a 21-letter alphabet. This one's 24. Each letter is assigned a bit string of 5 binary digits. This combination yields 32 possible encodings. Normally, you'd use a computer to run all these combinations, but it was quicker just to do it longhand until I found the right one.
He's so lifelike.
It's an irrational number known as phi, based on the ratio of line segments to each other and to the whole. It's called the golden ratio. It's a ratio found all through life. In fact, many people that we find conventionally attractive are proportioned based on that ratio. He made a reference to Leonardo da Vinci. Remember this? Da Vinci used it in a lot of his paintings. As a matter of fact, The Last Supper is a perfect example.
How do we find them?
Right. The whole concept is represented by this pendant, including the logarithmic spiral created by using a Fibonacci sequence. Follow me on this. We can manipulate this image, right?
Tell me what you need.
Pull up all the towns that the missings are from. Wonderful. We had 1 in Richmond, 1 in Dinwiddie, then 2 in Gloucester Point, then 3 in Saluda, and finally 5 in Loretto this morning. 11235 is a Fibonacci series. Each number added to the number before it. It's what his tics mean. He's subconsciously counting off the Fibonacci sequence in his head over and over again. Geometrically, it can be expressed as a spiral. It's called a logarithmic spiral. Can you put the spiral up on the map? Thanks. Okay, now flip it 180 degrees. Now make it bigger. Bigger. A little bit bigger. Stop. The pendant is like a key. Chester, Virginia.
You're sure?
And with his level of obsession with these numbers, the ratio will have permeated his entire life. If we took a city map of Chester, the location where Kaylee and the children are being held will fall on one of these points on that map as well. The ratio works with any scale at all. I was staring at pictures of the victims, and I knew there was a pattern connecting them, but I couldn't tell what it was until I broke it down mathematically. Why are we so drawn to celebrity faces? Because there's a symmetry to their beauty. The eyes, the ears, the ratio of the forehead to the chin. The more balanced they are, the more appealing they are to our eye.
These women aren't celebrities, though.
No, but there are similarities between them. And it wasn't until I scanned their pictures and got to the guys at Quantico that I got a full breakdown. All right, strip away eye color, hair color, and skin tone, and what are we left with geometrically? He might not even be aware that he sees it in them. There have been studies that suggest that we pick our spouses subconsciously based on a facial symmetry that we recognize, which means he only has interest in the bodies as they relate back to him. Encryption's a highly specialized skill set, but it's fundamentally a mathematical process, which means it's a human process, so sometimes your technique can reveal where you learned it. I think I know where he learned how to do this.
Where?
Harvard, which oddly enough isn't known for its advanced math program, but it is known for one particular class. When you're good at math, good enough to get into Harvard, you take a math class called Math 15. When you're better than that, you take Math 25. But when you're the best, the absolute best, you take Math 55. Honors advanced calculus and linear algebra. Graduates are immediately employed by the US government because they're too dangerous to work anywhere else. More specifically, they're employed at the NSA. Your mother's bipolar, and almost certainly an undifferentiated schizophrenic. Your father suffered severe shell shock in the war, what we now refer to as post-traumatic stress disorder. As far as I can tell, he remained clinically depressed the rest of his life. 53% of all serial killers have some form of mental illness in their family. And in your case, both your parents suffered from psychological disorders, which they largely took out on you. They beat each other as much as they beat you. So violence became a natural expression of love. There's something called the hypothalamic region of the limbic system. It's the most primitive part of the brain. It wants what it wants without conscience and without judgment. It's what makes babies cry when they're hungry, scream when they want affection, become enraged when a toy is taken away. In most children, a healthy relationship with their mother counters the hypothalamus and maps the child's brain into healthy emotional response. Hypothalamus never learned control. It still operates on that primitive records level. Indicate that you display the symptoms of satyriasis. You're obsessed with sex. Sex and love are cross-wired with pain in your life. Additionally, your hypothalamus won't allow you to stop seeking the desires that it wants. So you became a sexual sadist. No sexual partner will ever willingly submit to the painful desires that you have. The only way you can serve them is by making a partner compliant, making sure that they do exactly what you want them to do. And you ensure that by killing them. Earlier, you said your victims never had a chance. I think you know deep down, it was you who really never had a chance. These are the construction blueprints for the airplane. I compared it to the way the plane broke apart, and I think I may have found something interesting. The hull of an airplane is really just a bunch of round barrels riveted together. The wing, however, is a masterpiece. It's the most physically complicated component of an airplane. Nearly 200 feet long, it bears the weight of the entire aircraft and is shaped precisely to fit within 1/100th of an inch. The curvature of the wing is what gives it its lift. Air rushes faster over the top, creating a vacuum, which sucks the wing upward and in turn the entire fuselage. This is important because an airplane wants to be nose up. It creates positive G's, that sensation you get when you're forced into the back of your seat. Negative G's, on the other hand, are an entirely different matter. When the nose of a plane begins pitching downward, you get negative G's, which puts enormous pressure on the structural integrity of the aircraft. With enough negative G's, the wings will start to rip off the plane, which then compromises the fuselage. The plane broke into major pieces along structural joints and attachment points. There's no evidence of gaping holes or pieces of the fuselage torn in areas without seams to suggest impact with an external object like a missile. So the fact is, the way the plane broke apart, I think the crash was caused by something internal.
But what if we sent in Reid?
I am banned from casinos in Las Vegas, Laughlin, and Pahrump because of my card counting ability.
Look, I know I'm not a genius like the boy wonder here, but poker is not blackjack. It's about bluffing, reading human nature, head games. It's not math.
It's not entirely accurate. There actually is a mathematical equation for knowing when to raise and when to fold. If P represents the size of the pot at the time of play, then P times N minus 1, with N representing the estimated number of players of the final round of betting.
Okay, fine, I surrender. Just try not to lose all of my money.